Dr. Alaina, please tell us about yourself, your background, and just introduce yourself to the audience.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on here today. I'm so excited to co-host this conversation with you. I feel like when we connected a few weeks ago, we just had so much in common, and I was like, we need to talk more about this. So this is us manifesting and making it happen. My name is Dr. Alaina Puff. I have a PhD in psychology and am now the founder and owner of Flow State Coaching and Consulting, which is my sole business. I stumbled into the entrepreneurial journey. It was never part of the plan. But here we are doing it every single day. I primarily work with what I would call highly sensitive children and their families. And then I also work at the intersection of being parents and entrepreneurs. So I'm really interested in supporting parents who are cultivating their own entrepreneurial journey while raising tiny humans. And so I'm just really excited about helping people uncover their own intuition. One of the things when I was being trained as a psychologist was that it was this understanding that I held all the answers to help other people. And I just don't think that is the case. I like to integrate a more holistic and integrated approach to providing care to my clients. And so, with that, I use this concept of intuition being that all the answers to whatever you're struggling with, they're already inside of you. And so helping empower people to recognize that you hold and yield that ability to make major shifts in your life, whether that's the way you're showing up for your children, the way you're showing up for your spouse, the way you're showing up for your business. You have the ability to create this beautiful harmony and balance in your life. And I'm just here to help you along the ride. So that has been something that I have infused into my business over the last 2 years that she's been up and running. And it has just been such a gift to be able to steward this business and watch it grow and evolve.
Yes, I absolutely love that. I think that's one area that we like really resonated with each other is believing that everybody has the answer inside them. They just maybe need some help getting to that answer. Because we're not here to fix you. You're not like broken. You're not a problem. We're just here to help guide you to figure out what is most aligned for you and like your highest self and highest goals.
You
So
got it.
yes, thank you so much for that introduction. Yeah, Dr. Lena, she has a very unique background as a psychologist and then now working with entrepreneurs, busy moms, which is amazing. And we'll talk more about like the bridge of how you got from more of the traditional or conventional route to where you are now. I'll introduce a little bit about myself. I know I don't talk a lot about my background, but I'm a naturopathic doctor. I studied psychology and neuroscience in my undergrad and then went to naturopathic medical school. My focus was on mental health, primarily anxiety and depression. But then while I was there, I realized I was having some unhealthy patterns in my own relationships, and I questioned like, why is this happening to me when I feel like I'm very self-aware? But the problem was I was aware of these things. I intellectualized my emotions, but I hadn't really done the work to actually heal and move through them. And at the same time, while I was in medical school, I was seeing patients who were coming in for mental emotional concerns and physical concerns like autoimmune conditions, chronic illness. And I was seeing that in all of these patients, they had some sort of past trauma or limiting beliefs that were showing up in from their past and in their present, and it was actually contributing to their disease or state of health now. So I was like, oh, that is actually the key to healing in so many areas of our lives. And at the same time, I could see how relationships and how we show up in our relationships and how the limiting beliefs come out in those affect us and get passed on from ourselves to our children. And that can then also manifest as diseases that get passed on through family. It's not just in genetics, it's your environment. Really, only like 5 to 10% of genetic illness is from your genes, and the rest is environment and nurture.
Wow.
So that's what led me here. But yeah, my background is more like acupuncture, homeopathy, herbs, nutrition, lifestyle, even some minor surgery. So very different. And I love that we both have these unique approaches to care.
Yes, it's awesome.
Yeah, so we will get started with our first question or topic here. I want us to talk a little bit about the limitations of our traditional background and training. Now that everybody knows kind of what our background is, where do you see limitations in your background or like how you were taught in school?
How much time do you have? Because I could just go on and on and on about this question. I have so much to say, but for the sake of being succinct, my training, I was always interested in working with children. I was a classroom teacher before I studied psychology and got my graduate degrees. I wanted to work with children because I saw children as hope, as a symbol of hope. Before the world had gotten to them and hardened them or pulled them away from their dreams. And so I really wanted to positively impact them while they were young and still very impressionable to plant the seeds that would eventually flourish well into their adolescence and through adulthood. And with that, I decided to study school psychology in particular. So I'm a school psychologist by training. And the reason I chose the education route was because I'm very passionate about education. It was actually something that in my own family was framed as a vehicle for upward mobility. Education will set you free. I was the first one in my family to go to college and then on to graduate school. And so I am a testament of investing in higher education allows you to bring forth a different degree of success than maybe what is common in your family system. So merging those two together, I thought, what a better place to meet kids is at school. It's where they spend most of their time. And really, throughout my professional journey up until creating my business, I placed myself in basically every type of setting, whether it was educational, whether it was medical, whether it was community mental health, whether it was the legal and justice system. I have been on this journey of trying to find an environment where I truly can meet my clients where they're at in a way that feels supportive to me. I mean, I've even practiced in private practice traditionally, and that didn't even feel good because at the end of the day, from an insurance standpoint, I had to diagnose everybody that came in for a billing code. And so that brings me to like my biggest qualm with modern psychology. It's all about what is wrong with you.
Hmm.
It's all about what's lacking, what's hard for you, what's challenging for you. When I would sit with clients and I'd be like, "What brought you here today?" They would never start with anything around what was going well in their life. It was this very deficit minded approach. And the other piece that I mentioned in my opening statement was there was a lot of, in my training and in practice, there was a lot of power given to me as the provider to fix people.
Hmm.
And honestly, that just was never really resonant with me. I thought, and it put a lot of pressure on a new practitioner of like, I don't know how to fix anyone. Like I can give them the tools and resources, but at the end of the day, they have to, take the agency and the belief that they could do this. And so I think psychology has a long way to go, and we've come very far. I mean, in retrospect, like 50 years ago, we were shocking people, pretty much on the reg. And so we have evolved rapidly in this field, but there is so much more that we need to understand. And especially when you're dealing with the pediatric population, we are so quick to blame the child and diagnose the child. I mean, you look on the internet right now, it's all about how everyone has ADHD, everyone has behavioral difficulties. And a cornerstone of my approach now is instead of focusing on what's wrong with your child, we're focusing on what are their strengths? What are their gifts? How can we, as their care team, including parents, like empower you to harness those strengths to help with any areas that you might be struggling with. And so I just think we have it completely flipped. And there's a lot of other people out there who kind of have a similar belief system to me, but they're living in this broken system where you still have to put a diagnostic code for a 3-year-old that comes in to bill insurance for it. And so they kind of have to do it with an arm behind their back, which is unfortunate. But I think more and more systemically, we're moving towards this idea of that this is a complex kind of way of approach. Human behavior, human psychology is complex, and always starting with what's wrong is clearly not serving us well.
Yeah, definitely. And it's very disempowering to, especially with children, to tell them that they have this diagnosis and they're going to be stuck like this forever.
Right.
So much of that is upbringing, environment, nurture, the way that they like the tools that they have to process emotions or handle things. Because sometimes we just don't know how to process something and then it gets stuck in us, and then that turns into depression or anxiety because
Right.
we haven't been taught how to emotionally regulate or have like healthy conversations and express our needs and our feelings to other people.
Correct.
And I feel like it's kind of become a badge of honor in a way to have these diagnoses. And I can see how that would feel easier to a lot of people to feel like this is now my label and I don't have to do anything more about it. But that's definitely not my belief because one, that's living from a disempowered state, and two, there is so much that can be done, and people need to know about the options.
Absolutely. We talk about it in psychology. We call it locus of control. And there's an external locus of control and an internal. And control is something I talk about all the time in my work with parents and entrepreneurs. And an external locus of control is attributing your struggles to something external from you. So, like I have ADHD and that's why I can't do X, Y, and Z. And I think the internet has been such a beautiful modality to get some common symptoms out to the general public about what these diagnoses look like. But to your point, I think people have latched onto it and now they're giving that locus of control to these external sources. Well, if you're putting your power outside of you, how are you ever going to be able to feel empowered, to your point, to do something about it, to work to build strategies so that things aren't as challenging? And so one of the things that I really champion is giving people that internal locus of control that everything is in here. And like, for example, I'll use ADHD. Like, part of having ADHD is that you are beautifully gifted in some aspects of your life. You might struggle in, self-regulation or impulsivity, but 9 times out of 10, I always see that you have something amazing about the way your brain is wired in light of that ADHD. It's a gift as well. And so helping people recognize that, like, you are unique, you are gifted in your own way. How can we harness that? Makes a lot more sense than saying, well, I need to rely on this medication for the rest of my life and figure it out. That's just, again, the disempowerment is such a good way of framing that.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the saying of like you don't measure a fish's ability by its like ability to climb a tree compared to like I don't know, a leopard or something like that. I don't know the exact saying. I always get those things kind of like mixed up, but the idea is the same. Like yes, everybody has like their unique strengths, and to be able to harness that and not look at it as like something that's holding them back or a weakness or something that has to be suppressed is very powerful in not just like self-confidence, but like also just like being able to uh, use that power in so many good ways too.
Absolutely.
And the other thing you mentioned insurance earlier.
Mm.
Insurance is like, as a naturopathic doctor, most of us don't take insurance, which is very helpful for us to be able to actually like get to the root cause and like spend more time with patients and help them actually heal. But I feel like in the traditional model of like therapy, psychology, a lot of those practitioners will just, if they even think to like look into labs for maybe depression or anxiety, they'll go to a traditional or like conventional doctor who will then maybe look at, a TSH level, thyroid stimulating hormone, or maybe look at vitamin D. But those are so basic that like there could be so much more going on that's not being addressed. Do you have any like
Absolutely.
thoughts on that?
I mean, yeah, I have like living testimony of it. I was a seemingly healthy 25-year-old, fresh out of my master's program, working with children in schools, and I started getting sick. And I mean, the way that I was bounced around in our healthcare system, I mean, I went on for 5 years trying to get properly diagnosed with an autoimmune condition and find the right medication. I mean, doctors, they put me on antidepressants. They put me, I went to another doctor who prescribed me over $800 a month worth of vitamins and supplements that did nothing. Like, I was mishandled and I was young and I was sick. I was so sick. And, one of the things that I'm so grateful for in my journey is I've been on this like, my business is an embodiment of my own personal path of finding my authentic self. And within the last year, I had a Hashimoto's, a thyroid condition. So TSH was the main screener that they used for me. In the
Hmm.
last year, I've completely went off medication, a medication that they told me I would be on for the rest of my life. And I'm walking testimony that when you do the work, and what I mean by that is sitting with those shadowy parts of yourself, sitting with past traumas, both from this life and things that you've inherited from your past, and freeing yourself from that, it's directly correlated to what you were talking about, physical health outcomes.
Hmm.
I mean, if I went to any Western conventional doctor right now, medical doctor, they would say, you need to get back on medicine. Like, what are you doing? But here I am saying, like, no, like my symptoms are completely in remission. Like I'm able to function in ways that I never was able to in the last 10 years. And I attribute that to walking this journey. And so I think it's unfortunate that that's the system that people are expected to navigate, but that's why conversations like these are so important because I always tell my families, whether they're talking to their child's school or their child's pediatrician, ask the questions, be the squeaky wheel. If you don't like the answer, go somewhere else and find something better. Like you have to be such an advocate in this system. And I think for a lot of people, that's really uncomfortable.
Yeah, especially if you don't have the knowledge or even know that there's other options out there, you
Right.
feel like you have nowhere else to go. You can't dig deeper. And like I was mentioning earlier about the autoimmune conditions, so often like there is trauma, there is like limiting beliefs that are manifesting this way because we're not letting something out. We're creating stress inside of our body, which is inflammation, because we're suppressing ourselves, we're suppressing our emotions, and then our body doesn't know how to like handle that stress properly and then starts attacking itself. And oftentimes I see people that have like thyroid conditions like Hashimoto's, which is really probably the most common, um, where they do have suppression around like their throat area and speaking their truth and speaking up for themselves. And there's so much healing that can be done just on like these subconscious things, the inner work, the shadow work that we haven't done or need to address that can heal so much. I have somebody that I'm working with who I'm not even seeing them as a patient, just as a coaching client within like relationships, mindset, all of that. And while we definitely haven't been focusing on her health stuff, she mentioned that her hair is starting to like be colored again, going from white to black again, which is amazing and incredible in a very short amount of time.
Mhm. That's beautiful. Yeah, I think it's helping people remember who they are. I think so much like when we talk about trauma and what that does to the brain, like I look at my work, I often classify it as a remembrance. We're going back to remember who you have always been, whether you're 16 years old or you're 52 years old, like we're here to restore that part of your consciousness that was always true. And so I think we tend to like get steeped in our traumas and in the things, and it's all unconscious for the most part, at least in my experience. But again, really helping to liberate people from these narratives or these feelings of hopelessness that they'll never be able to feel complete or whole again is such I mean, I couldn't imagine doing anything else with my career. Like, it's such a deep honor. And I still regularly work with a team of healers and therapists and people on my end to take care of me. I say behind every great therapist is another even better therapist. But like, I'm at the point in my life where anything that I ask my clients to do, is something that I haven't already done first. And that feels so good to be able to say, like, I see you struggling, and I also am holding up the path of the way through this, and I'm going to walk it with you because I've been there. And I mean, what a great testimony to be able to share with others and help, give them the hope and courage that you can make huge changes in your life and you can do it rather quickly. It doesn't need to be this 5, 10 year process.
Yeah, you don't have to be in like traditional talk therapy for 10 years to still kind of be in the same place. And yeah, have like doing the tools, doing the work that you give your clients is so powerful. In school, obviously, I was learning more and more like techniques, but we were really encouraged to practice them on our own or do them with our patient at the time, so that one, we could be there to support the patient and their experience, so that we're not just giving it to them and they're doing it on their own and maybe having like interesting thoughts or revelations or uncomfortable experiences from it. So we're there for their first time for that. And then we also know what it's like to experience that modality as well, which is really important. And I feel like obviously in maybe like a medical or healthcare setting, you're not going to take everything that you prescribe
Right.
or recommend to your patients or clients, but the tools that you can, I think it's really important because it gives you more insight as to what it's like to do it and like the profound effects that can come from it as well.
Yeah, it's connection, it's lived experience. I mean, similarly in psychology, we were told to be blank slates to our clients. And I think that was so counterintuitive because I was like, I'm supposed to sit here and you're telling me literally horrific things about your life and be like, tell me more, tell me more. It felt so disingenuous to who I was. And so I'm more of a fan of I love a good self-disclosure. I mean, if I'm not to make it about me, but like especially working with kids who are navigating divorce in their family. I tell my kids all the time, I come from a divorced home. I know what it's like to pack up your things from your childhood home and move away. Like it's horrific. And so that that built a sense of connectedness that, I'm not the only one navigating this. There's people who have come before me who have survived this, just like I was saying, and they got through it, which means, I can instill the belief that I can get through this as well.
Yeah, it's that like tactful vulnerability that builds connection and trust with the people that you're working with.
Yeah, I love that tactful vulnerability. It's perfect.
Yeah. There was something else that you mentioned. Oh yeah, just kind of the idea of taking off the layers and getting back to your like true pure self is so important to me as well. And I feel like in the more traditional model where you're just kind of repeating your story or your traumas, that just continues to solidify that story in your brain and keeps you stuck in the past rather than moving forward.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's something you and I have spoken about, a shared experience. And like for anybody who's listening, like if you are an intelligent, high achieving woman, like the two of us on this call, this one is for you. Because there's an archetype that I've picked up on in my practice for smart girls who are used to accomplishing whatever they set out in front of them. Talk therapists hate to see us coming. They hate to see us coming because in my own experience, I started with traditional talk psychotherapy because I was training to become that. And so I was going into these therapist office and doing mental gymnastics around these folks, like just contorting my words and downplaying my severity of my symptoms and rationalizing and intellectualizing it, like you said. And the therapist would walk away and be like, you know what? You're actually doing great, Alaina. Like, keep up the good work. Like, and then I would leave the session and feel like garbage because I felt like maybe I wasn't truthful or feel like I have no real tactful strategies to be able to implement. That awareness was there of like, I know I do this because of X, Y, and Z, but then what? Now what do I do with that? Like, how do I go home and integrate that? And so, talk therapy was not actually what helped me heal. It was much more of an integration of the mind, obviously the body, and then my spirit, the soul. It's this three-part kind of approach, and it's something that I built flow state on, is that you can't nurture one without the other. And so the mind is obviously what runs most of us, especially smart women. And you giving yourself permission to turn that off, to not lead from the top down, but the bottom up, and really being able to trust that your body holds a lot of the answers. That's in your wheelhouse because you talk about like physical health and wellness. And then also like the spirituality piece, like understanding that like we are human, we're spiritual beings having human experiences, that regardless of what you subscribe to, whether you worship God or that tree outside, I don't really care, but the belief in something bigger than self is something that, there's all this research around faith. And like when
Mhm.
people have faith in something, when they believe in something intangible, it's correlated to all these feelings of optimism, hope, improved well-being, and there's something salient there for people. And so I always talk with my clients about like, they talk, well, I have religious trauma, I grew up Catholic or Christian, and that's fine. You don't need to go back to church if that's not what feels aligned for you. But the importance of believing in something and instilling that in your children too, is like that part that I feel like often gets missed in more conventional practice.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think probably a lot of therapists or doctors don't want to push that onto
Correct.
people, but it is so powerful for like faith, trust, and hope. Giving up like that feeling like you have to have all of the control, giving up the power to something else is so helpful for like acceptance and forgiveness and detachment,
Yeah.
all of that. And um, that's one thing. So I have a background in Al-Anon actually.
Okay.
I started Alateen when I was like 15 years old, and that's really what like got me interested in mental health and trauma and like what makes people happy. And one thing that was so impactful for me was realizing that Al-Anon, Alateen is very much a spiritual journey, spiritual practice. There's a huge emphasis on having a higher power. Yes, the program is technically based in like Christian beliefs, but it doesn't, to me, doesn't push that.
Hmm.
And is more just about choose something that is a higher power. I remember in one of the early meetings that I went to, the leaders who were like the adults from Al-Anon, were like, yeah, we had one girl who literally chose her doorknob in her bedroom to be her higher power. Um, and there's just so much power in and realizing that you don't have to have all the power, or you don't have to have all the control, and you can let that go. So that's really profound and definitely overlooked in a lot of, in a way, I would say like professional settings. If I don't know if that's the best word, but to me, that's like the like white coat, it's the couch, it's the notebook and things that like feel like they have to be so stiff. When really there's more humanness, I think, and humanity and connection in coaching.
Absolutely. Yeah. I had to go through like a whole shedding of my identity when I decided to step into coaching and consulting and away from the traditional psychologist practice. I mean, even down to like, I had a closet full of blazers and pantsuits, and I was like, I don't want to wear any of this. Like, I want to wear jeans and a t-shirt. Like, I mean, so much of my story was disentangling the things that I thought I should be versus who I actually am. And I wrestled with the decision of going over to the coaching and consulting route. I had a lot of my own misconceptions and opinions around being a coach and what that meant. I mean, the reality is that coaching is an unregulated industry, and there's a lot of people out here doing harm in this space. I will just say it. They're doing harm. And I think one of the things with people like you and I in the coaching space that gives me hope is, we're able to enter the space and work our practice, our medicine in a way that feels supportive and reflective of us. But we also have the professional credentials to back that we're not just some crazy lady in our home office like spewing off nonsense. Like that's one of the things when I talk to people around like whether you're pursuing a traditional therapist or you are looking at a coach, I always say look at their credentials, like whether they're using them or not. Like one of the most important things to my current practice still is as a psychologist, we take an oath to do no harm. And
Hmm.
that is still the cornerstone of my practice. I am here to protect my clients. And if I just went and took a, you know, 50-hour coaching course, that's not what's portrayed there. And so I I wrestle even to this day I still wrestle with it because I think there's part of that like professional shedding that I had to let go of to be able to be in this authentic version of me and be in a practice that feels deeply aligned. But I also trust that like between my education, professional experiences, and my own truth, that like I'm doing right by the people that I serve. And I get that feedback all the time and always ask for that feedback of like, is there anything I could do better? What would be helpful? And I get little confirmations from the universe all the time that you're on the right path.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. One thing I wanted to go back to that you mentioned before was this idea. I think it extends definitely beyond just intelligent women, but it's rampant amongst intelligent women. Um, is this like idea of the top-down processing where we're like
Mm,
overthinking always in our head and where we need to like come back to our body, just even having like the body awareness that like, oh, I'm having sensations around this experience, whether it's like I'm getting tense or I'm feeling something in my stomach. These are signs that we have to listen to, and they also are like a gateway to healing. So, like, for example, one of the modalities that I use is called neuro-emotional technique or NET. And it helps to identify like what is the stress or trauma that's associated with this physical symptom or mental, emotional, or just like a feeling that you have. And what has been so interesting for me in most recently, we'll say, is that a lot of stuff that's been coming up for me has gone back to the day that I was born and also given up for adoption from my biological mom.
mm,
And like my whole life, I was like, I'm sure that that's affected me in some way, but I don't really feel it. Like, I don't feel like I'm consciously bothered by it, but there's been so much that like my body is holding on to that has been like triggered from a present circumstance that I've gone and done NET around. And it's been incredible to unpack that and take off these layers and get closer to my authentic self because um I don't know, I'm just feeling called to share this.
yeah, I
But
love it.
like as a literal newborn baby, to have that first experience be abandonment is insane. And just getting to peel back all of the layers of like all of the emotions that were going on that day is crazy. Like the confusion of why don't you want me? There like a sense of
Mhm.
uh are you like disgusted by me or I'm disgusted by you? I'm picking up on these emotions or not being good enough or feeling like, yeah, it's okay, but also like, actually, I don't feel okay about it. Um, has been really interesting. So I just want to share that in that so much of the work that we need to do is in those subconscious and unconscious layers.
Yeah, first off, thank you so much for sharing. That's a really vulnerable share and is not lost on me. And I think um, it really exemplifies that unconscious piece that we often overlook because we don't know what we don't know, right? And so I think if you're used to kind of spending, 95% of your time in your prefrontal cortex, like why would you ever stop and think otherwise? And so for me, like it wasn't until I was in my 30s. I mean, I remember I went to this networking event, and they had sound bowls at the networking event. And at the end of the networking event, they were like, lay down on these mats. And I was like, what kind of BS are we doing right now? Like, I didn't subscribe or believe to any of this. I was like fresh out of grad school and still very science driven and logic and reason driven. And I'll never forget, I laid down on a mat and I felt my like glutes and hamstrings light up. And it
Mm.
almost felt like muscle knots. And I was like, oh, I worked out this morning. I didn't stretch. I didn't hydrate. But really, it was just one of the most profound moments of my life. When I think about my life playing out, on my final days, I will remember this day because that was the first time, as far as I can remember, that I felt my body.
Wow.
I had literally been a dissociated floating head for like most of my life. And it had served me well. Like I was this successful, credentialed, intelligent, you know, uh, high achieving woman. So
Hmm.
on paper, I looked like I was crushing it, but like deeply devoid of any connection to anything below my neck. And so it was this hunger for like, okay, now I need to feel this again. Like, how do I get this? And, it has been again, it's a restoration, it's a return back to self. And so in your story, like that day, that you were born, yeah, there was so much energetically going on in that moment. I would even take it a step further back and say, like, what was going on in utero? Like, think about being in the presence of your biological mother who's wrestling with, like, do I want this child? Do I, like, I hear this from kids all the time. Like, I can connect back to in utero experiences by piecing together things that children remember, and which, by the way, modern psychology says children don't form salient memories until the age of 3. I have lots of proof that that isn't true, at least in the kids that I have worked with who remember well before then. And their mothers, and talking about what was going on in the mother's life during that time, during the pregnancy, and how wounds formed between the child and the mother before the baby even was born.
Oh yeah.
And so it's like there is nowhere in modern medicine that speaks about this. There's nowhere that we can go, okay, try this protocol to like heal that or try this medication to resolve that. Like it is, it takes a courageous, open human being to sit there and go, okay, like I need to sit with this for not only myself but for my child. And I was talking over on social media yesterday about this new research study that came out a few weeks ago where they looked at childhood anxiety. Okay, so kids ranging, from anywhere between 5 to 10 years old who were presenting with classic anxiety symptoms like excessive worry, tummy aches. They were refusing school because, they'd wake up and feel anxious, like common things that we see all the time. And they took those kids and they split them into two cohorts. With the one cohort, the children were enrolled to see psychologists weekly for therapy for X amount of time. So they would use talk and play based techniques. The other cohort, the kids did absolutely nothing. The parents were enrolled in therapy with psychologists. They worked on reparenting. They worked on trauma processing. They worked on emotional regulation and parenting techniques and tactics to help support their anxious children. Guess which group did extraordinarily better?
The parent one.
The parent only group. So your kid never stepped in a professional's office and they got better. And I think like I just want to take this research and like wave it around the world and be like, look, like we have to take care of ourselves if we want our kids to thrive. And unfortunately, our society has it, flip-flopped,
Mhm.
where it's like, oh, I was talking to a mom yesterday and she started working one-on-one with me after I saw her kid. And I said, "Why are you here? Like, what do you want to accomplish in this time frame?" She looked at me and she goes, "Dr. Alaina, I will do anything for my child." And my goal by the end of our work together is that she'll say, "I'll do anything for myself."
Mm, yeah. That's a powerful distinction. And just also the fact that she said that she was willing to do anything for her child is also, I think, very profound because there aren't a lot of parents that feel that way, that will actually do the work on themselves to help their children.
Yeah, there are cycle breakers, which I think you and I can both identify with being.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your experience with the sound healing too. I was literally like getting chills as soon as you talked about laying down on the mat and then that being the first time that you felt like actually connected to your body again. Um,
Crazy.
yeah, and then yeah, so much can happen in utero that is so often overlooked. And honestly, like the increase in C-sections too is very interesting. There's very interesting research around that. But I wanted to share one experience with somebody who we did an ET together, and what came up was an experience when they were in their mom's womb. And as they were like processing and releasing this thing, first off, they didn't even feel like they could tap into that feeling or experience because obviously they were very tiny at that time.
Hmm.
But they tried and did it anyway, and they experienced this like full body shaking and like tears and release that was like nothing they'd ever experienced before. And it's like that your nervous system is holding on to these things and we don't even realize it. So there's so much work that can be done around that, and it can just free up a person's entire life in so many different ways. Um, and I've had experiences too where it went back to before even being in the womb to like my idea of where my soul was before that. So there's so many layers, and this stuff is considered like woo-woo and not real, but it actually like has so much impact still. And so I hope that um, more professionals start to recognize it and utilize these tools in their practices.
Yeah, I was reading somewhere that like astrology is going to become the standard of practice in our lifetime to explain things. And I was like, I'm waiting to see the day. But I think that's why people like you and I are so valuable in this movement is that clearly the way things are, it's not going well. Like this country is more sick than it ever was before. Our kids are suffering at higher rates than any generation prior. Like clearly what we're doing isn't great. Okay? So like we can pretty much universally acknowledge that, even from like a mental health standpoint. We could see,
Hmm.
reduce it to that. With that, I think what I picture your business and my business to be we're bridges. We're bridging these worlds, and one of the things I've had to come to terms with is not everyone is willing to walk that bridge. I mean, there are some clients that I work with where I keep a lot of this conversation at a very, surface level because that's where that family is at. The family is functioning in the state of chronic survival and they don't have the spaciousness to explore some of these things, whereas a family who is hungry to learn and understand different alternative approaches, then they're going to be like, let's eat it up, like let's go. And so I look at my business as being a steward for having this information and, holding that frequency for the people who need to find me, they'll find me. Like without a marketing strategy or anything like that, anything tactile, like I do believe that as we continue to talk about these things, but also just hold that frequency of ourselves of like we're not for everyone. Not everyone's going to resonate with this. There's going to be people who still want to go the conventional route, and I love that for you. That's great if that feels good for you, but at the end of the day, like I do believe collectively there's a movement happening.
Oh,
And
definitely.
I'm so excited and honored to be part of it. I think that our generation and the generations behind us are going, this isn't working. Like we need to approach health and well-being differently and like this is how we're going to do it. Like we're going to find people like you and I to, link arms and choose something different for the future. And so it's almost like the greatest grassroots movement in history. Like it's very there's no banner, there's no symbol, there's no like you know, outwardly expressive way of talking about it. It's all in this very grassroots level, but it's people having conversations about, what does this look like? How's our parenting approach different? How do we want to raise our kids? What are we putting in their bodies? Are we doing this generational work or are we going to end up like our parents? Like these conversations are happening, in household to household. And it makes me so excited because I keep hearing more and more about them. And I'm like, we're doing it, guys.
Yeah, and it truly does have to be this like blend of our entire like holistic life. It can't just be I'm gonna go and change my mindset. Yes, mindset is impactful, it's great, but at the same time, you also have a nervous system that can easily self-sabotage, or you have like dietary factors that are maybe keeping you sluggish or unmotivated or tired. Or you have what else? Just like a lack of spirituality in your life and then you feel depressed. So it's very multi-layered and by like blending all of these together, that's where we actually see the most healing.
I love it. Ooh, so cool.
Yes. Let me see what else we have here. Um, I feel like we've touched on this, but I'll just share it in case you have anything to add. How do you feel that these limitations that we've talked about prevent further development or healing or growth?
Yeah, I feel like we've really explored this idea. Um, but I guess if I were to add anything, I think it's that reclamation of power, like in, talking about power and control and how to call that back to yourself, especially when you go through anything traumatic. And I'm talking like big T, little T trauma. Like it could be anything in between. Like it could be, your childhood dog died and that was your first exposure with death. It could be something really traumatic like abuse or neglect.
Mhm.
Um, when we experience hardship in life, we make a decision. We make a decision to be defined by that trauma, both consciously and unconsciously, as we discussed. Or we can make a decision that we won't let that influence future narratives or the way we move through life. And like just talked about, there's going to be some people who are going to be like, no way, that ain't my life. I'm doing it differently. And there's going to be some people who are going to be really afraid of that
Yeah.
Because in my opinion, I think that doing this work, and it's never done, by the way, it's never over. It's a constantly iterative as you move through life and experiences. Um, it's the hardest thing I've ever done. I would go get 12 more PhDs before I had to go through that again. It's gritty, and I'm sure you can relate to that in your own experience.
What I feel like is so ironic about this too is that the ones that choose to like be in a more disempowered state are the ones that like really also need the other work, the deeper work. And it usually comes down to like feeling unworthy of having something better. And that's something that like can be worked through too.
Yeah.
But that's something that they also have to come to on their own to decide like, do I really want to stay in this state or do I want to choose something different for myself?
And there's some people that will just stay there. I mean, I think even in my own personal experience, I've had conversations with my parents around like, I think that's something that doesn't get talked about enough is when you are the cycle breaker in your family and you have to leave your parents behind.
Hmm.
Like, oh, one of the greatest pains of my human experience in this lifetime is knowing that I will go on to live this beautiful, fruitful life that they will never get to experience because of their own choosing. It's
Right.
heartbreaking because of course you want to bring them along. You're like, come on, like I got the keys to the safe, like let's go. And they're just hiding in those shadows. And when I see that with clients where they reach out and they like, one parent is so eager and excited and the other parent is like, hell no, we're not hiring that lady. Like it's really tough, but this journey isn't for everyone. It's just not. And that is something I have to constantly remind myself of. But for those who are ready, like you have safe harbor. Like let's strap you to the rocket and let's go. Like we're getting out of here. But recognizing that that's not the case for everyone and that isn't not trying to not take that personally, is, you know, I won't lie, I still struggle with it, but it's really important because it provides that grace.
Yeah, for us as practitioners and for the people that are the cycle breakers in their family or doing the work and having to leave people behind, there is a lot of learning too with the acceptance and detachment of letting go and like not feeling like you have to force someone and bring them along and just letting them be on their own journey.
Yeah, there's a lot to say there for sure, but I definitely empathize.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
We are coming close on time, but let's do like one more question. What could happen if more professionals collaborated like this? Like, what do you see as the, let's say, ideal vision or world?
Yeah, before I started Flow State, I was actually teaching graduate psychology when to a group of students, and it was something that I just kind of fell into. But I got to have my little professor stint, and I always told my grad students that they were all training to become school psychologists, and I said the education system will collapse in our lifetime.
Hmm.
I think our healthcare system's right behind it, right? I
Hmm.
just have a feeling that the unsustainability of these systems is evident. And I said to them, it will collapse. And they all just like gulped because here they are taking out massive student loans and spending exorbitant amounts of time and energy, studying to be these clinicians. I said, but I'm going to train you to be the ones who will be there amongst the rubble to rebuild it
Mm.
and build it in a way that feels aligned to how it was always meant to be. And so with that, again, I look at this movement, this collective movement of, thought leaders, of creatives, people who are never meant to fit inside a box. We are moving at a grassroots level. It's something that's happening inside one-on-one conversations, small groups. It's nothing on like a major or national scale, but I think that's the way it needs to be. It's with every conversation, there's momentum building, that collective energy is building of a different way of doing things, a different way of healing. And that makes me so excited that, we are continuing to mobilize in this very covert way. And I think we'll just wake up one day and it'll look entirely different.
Yeah, we'll have done
Like
it.
we'll have done it. We'll be like, oh wow, there's all kinds of me's out there. Like how great. There's all kinds of yous out there. And so I just, that's what gives me hope to keep getting up every day and, doing this work. And I'm excited to see what the future holds. It feels very promising.
Yeah, yeah, me too. I'm a fire sign, and so I don't know. I think that's why I have this draw towards fire, and sometimes I'm like, sometimes you just have to burn things down for new things to grow, and I think that's beautiful.
I love it. You're speaking my language.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much for doing this live with me. It was so great to explore all of these topics, and I hope that everybody got a lot out of this, at least some new ideas, new thoughts, and inspiration.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you so much for having me. For anyone listening, you can find me over at Dr. Alaina Puff on Instagram. And then my website is flowstatecc.com. I just got a website redesign, so go check that out. I have some free quizzes and resources over there to support you in your parenting and entrepreneurial journey. And yeah, thank you again for having me. This conversation was so fun.